This is Scott Alexander, and I'd like to welcome you to the conversation. Today I'm talking with a good friend of mine, an accomplished educator in the Boston School District, Crystal Campbell. How are you doing today, Crystal?
I'm well. How are you? Excited to be here.
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. For those that don't know, I met you through my best friend and producer, Matthew, a few years ago as part of your helping my wife and I address some concerns we had in our son's education. And I'm still appreciative that you provided some really great advice and wisdom at helping us get through some of those situations. So I was hoping you could spend a couple of minutes as we get started just telling us a little bit about your professional and educational background.
I am originally from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I went to Michigan State University where I got a degree in education, primarily deaf education, elementary ed, and English language arts. Then I went to Atlanta to teach for a little bit and came to Boston, where I've been since 2009 to do my master's degree, and I was able to really flourish here and build my professional career.
So what's the difference between your experiences down in Atlanta and coming to Boston?
Well, I will say that there is a difference, but being from Michigan, the Midwest, of course, the South and the East Coast, but primarily I would say the level of access and resources. I'd say those are the two biggest aspects that I've seen, biggest differences I've seen being from the Midwest.
What do you mean when you say access?
Well, being from Michigan and Boston have quite a few things in common with regards to resources, the academia, and, like you have Boston University, Harvard University. New York is 4 hours away, Washington, D.C., 8 hours away. And then, of course, with Michigan, we're just tons of colleges and universities. So I'd say there's more access and resources to advancements and new programs, things of that nature. And that's not to say Atlanta didn't have that. Yeah, Atlanta had some of the same things, but for me, that's where I was able to see the biggest differences.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
But the Michigan will always be my home, the Midwest.
I feel that way too. Just having moved away from Michigan to Virginia was definitely a change of pace, but I still consider Michigan my home. I guess you get formalized wherever you get, wherever you come up, and that's still home to me. The focus of our conversation today is going to be on the differences in how people think. We just passed International Women's Day, so as it relates to your experience in working with kids, especially young women, what's your perspective on how we're teaching kids about how to think and approach problem solving?
This is a really loaded question, but one I'm so happy to pounce on. What I've seen, and I can't believe I'm old enough to say this, but similar to what we heard, and I'm sure what generations will follow, is that this is a very different generation. But I think it's definitely more applicable because this generation has access to technology and each other in a way that we never did, in a way that no one ever has been able to reach. And I think that has opened the doors for different avenues to approach and intertwine with young women. I also have seen, being in education, that there is this huge influence over the past 10 to 15 years of reality TV and how young women approach problem solving and thinking and focus. And that's something that I have seen, sadly, like with a lot of the TV shows, like, the ones that are out there. I hate to call them out, but, like the Love and Hip Hop and things like that, but that's not to knock all of them. But it's definitely had an influence, with the way that girls approach how they're going to talk to each other and how they're going to talk to adults. And I've seen that big time with our women, our brown and black kids.
I was just saying, you talk about reality TV. I've had that conversation with a few different people, and people get more reactionary. you react to things versus thinking about how to approach things, which speaks to like critical thinking. And I don't, there's not a lot of that you see, especially when you look at the different television shows, the reality shows. There's not a lot of critical thinking that people use to address their problems because that's not entertaining. But
yes,
this is life. That's we're not living on a reality show. We're living our lives trying to get better and be successful. So just when it comes to critical thinking, what does that mean to you?
Critical thinking means quite a bit to me. However, what it ultimately means is how I'm able to set and achieve my goals in an efficient manner. And how is my critical thinking going to allow that to flourish and come into fruition? And when it comes to critical thinking, I like to segue that into my own ability to be organized. And one of the biggest things that I found with critical thinking and having the ability to really evaluate situations is I have better management skills. I'm able to instill trust, and I present with a more positive business image. And also too, just it reduces clutter in your life and reduces your stress level and your productivity level. But those have been the three major keys: management skills, the trust that I'm able to build, and the business image. And that lines up right with what we're seeing with a lot of the influence that technology and some of the entertainment programs aren't presenting to a lot of our youth.
Well, are you seeing more or less of like critical thinking in education being taught, or just seeing it actively in practice?
Seeing it actively in practice. I think before I answer that, just to separate that, teaching and education is one of the most difficult fields and one of the most flourishing, one of the most, I don't even know the word, but one of the most, flourishing fields. It fills you up, when you're in it and you're working with kids. So I want to make sure I differentiate between that. But I think what I'm really seeing is the application of it. Seeing females, but seeing women, seeing females, and also seeing males. They just go from 0 to 500, literally without taking the time to actively think about how my actions are going to affect me in the future. And you just do not see that. You do not see that.
So you're not seeing, like, there's no course, at least that's what it sounds like. There's no course or no curriculum for teaching kids how to approach problems and think critically. Or is that not the case?
I would say that is the goal that all teachers are aiming for, is to build that critical thinking, and to build original thought. And that is one of the avenues that teachers struggle with, because we are bombarded with so much responsibility and so much that we are required to do in the time frame of 60 to 75 minutes. But I would say that is the aim. But outside of that too, outside of education, the building, what parents are doing and what the community is doing to assist our youth with building critical thinking and how to be successful, productive individuals. That's something that we're not seeing. Or not seeing a lot of. When you say, like, if there's a course, I don't think even in my own education, like K through 12 and whatnot, there's no specific course for that. It's more something that you work with the students on.
The closest I ever got to that was 8th grade. I had a teacher, Mr. Spencer. He gave us like logic problems where it's like we part of not every class, but at least once a week, we would all have like different logic problems. Maybe they'd be math related, maybe they'd just be like word problems and stuff like that. And he wasn't a math teacher. He just wanted us to learn how to think a little bit differently to solve different problems. And that's like, I take a lot of value in that now. And I realize how rare that was, because he was the only person, I think, that ever sat us down to specifically address how we could logically approach a problem and solve it in that, in the way that we're describing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
that's transformed into. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's transformed into what? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that's really transformed into the activity that you see a lot of. It's called a do now. So you see a lot of teachers doing that, and a lot of schools requiring that teachers do a do now at the start of the period to reinforce that aspect. But for me, what I found too, it's the deeper level. It's the connection of the strategy that you're introducing to students. That is the craft for me. That's where you allow that to flourish, and then also too. Student choice and the activities that you're presenting, and are you working up, it's called Bloom's taxonomy, and basically it's different levels of knowledge acquisition, and are you starting at your base level and then bringing your students through those levels to reach the top of the taxonomy through strategy. And you would want critical thinking to be a part of that, in addition to researching and discovery and creating. You would want that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like fundamentals. I was saying, like, with basketball, if you want to learn to play basketball, you got to learn how to dribble first before you can start running picks and and I ran out of battle. I'm not a sports guy, so I ran out of metaphor there.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's example right there. Maybe you got to try cooking. You need to try cooking. I think that's a better way to do it for you. So, and for me, it's how to plan a wedding. So.
But yeah, when it comes to just teaching kids the fundamentals of how to think, like that's what you're describing, is there's not a lot of that spent in education these days. Now, what would you say is the percentage of people who understand, accept, and then properly deal with the reality that we all think differently?
I want to take a different spin on that. I've always been, whenever someone says percentage, I'm always like, that's for me, because even with the way that I think and approach that, it's not in percentage. For me, I would say it's a matter of the way that I think. Oftentimes I have to, because I am a strong critical thinker, I often have to maneuver and figure out how to work with all types of ways that people think. And as a leader and as an efficient, efficient manager, and with that skill set, that is one of the strongest levels of critical thinking and that I have, is how can I get someone to see, however, not manipulate, but to understand through the way that they think. Now, not everyone takes that on, whether it be, ego or just, being hard-headed. But that is why I'm able to run a department the way I am, is because I have that skill set. And I'm able to say, okay, Scott thinks this way. So in order for me to present this, I'm going to have to present it in this manner so he gets it. And then Matt thinks this way. So I'm going to have to, so that is a part of the critical thinking and how I'm going to approach it. But then also, when I have to bring all my team together and pull everyone together like a set of strings, that is the arching of the critical thinking, because then I have to present it in a fashion where I'm reaching all of those different thinkers, all those different minds clearly. So I wouldn't say there's a percentage.
But what you're describing, it sounds like, does it concern you that a lot of kids aren't being taught to think that way? Because what you're describing is a great way to approach problems, but I don't remember anyone ever sitting me down to say, I had to come to that information on my own of how to think critically and learning that type of thing. But does it concern you that we're not formalizing how to approach dealing with problems? Like you just said, you present information to me a different way than you present it to Matthew or Jonathan or whoever, because you know that we take in information differently. You know, like what are some of the dangers of thinking that everyone should just think like me or think like I do?
Definitely. I can use myself as an example to answer that question. I always thought that something was inherently wrong with me. I always thought that I was this difficult person. I always thought that I was this trying person, this trying student, all kinds of things. And, you know, just made to feel less than, made to feel like I wasn't strong, that I wasn't an independent thinker, that I wasn't smart, ultimately, growing up. And that's K through 12. And it wasn't until I was able to really understand and see that oftentimes my ability to think fast and maneuver situations the way that I'm able to intimidate people or make people uncomfortable, because I just moved differently. I thought differently. And then that's not to say I didn't hit my faults, but that's also, if you're talking about the dangers of it, that self-efficacy, the self-esteem, that can take a beating because you are operating and thinking differently than how your presenter is, and that can be challenging. I know multiple times when I was in undergrad and maybe a few times in graduate school where I would challenge a teacher and I would challenge a professor, and I would get these looks like, you know, you don't want to do that because, you know, that's the professor and that's your grade and everything. But that in and of itself is fearful thinking. And once again, people were trying to force me to think like them and to behave like them instead of being my own person. So the effects of that are, you know, like you're saying, the dangers of that to the esteem of another young woman who is made to feel that being a leader and being strong and being poignant and elegant and eloquent is something to be looked down upon. And I know I battled that for many, many years. And, of course, with age comes wisdom, and you just learn that this is who I am, and it's got me this far. So what I'm also seeing as an I was going to say as an additional danger, too, is the positive image that is not being presented. It's also a big danger, especially for a lot of African American, Latino, but you know, our brown and black skinned young boys and girls. That's something that I feel is just going to continue to be perpetually presented to us. As long as you have your buxom and you have enough in the back and you can snap and talk and scream and fight the loudest, you're going to get ahead. So it has multiple dangers. In both avenues, academically, professionally, and personally.
I can see that. I was just going to say, it reminded me, the way you were describing your journey there, I was doing something with my daughter. She had a little social thing. It was something where parents come to, and we played a bunch of games and stuff like that. And there was a girl there, and she was, you know, they were all, I think, like 8 or 9. There was one little girl there that I flashed back to being a kid and seeing a girl just like that who we would have labeled as bossy back in the day. And I looked at her through the lens of, look at her, this little leader over there. She's kind of letting people know what to do. And it wasn't anything malicious or just kind of, I'm in charge, you got to do what I say. Nothing like that. She was just being a leader. And I could see how there was going to be some people who will great at that because she's being quote unquote bossy, and it's like they have to be the way she was carrying it. Her parents had to be encouraging her to just, hey, if you know the way and you're comfortable and feeling confident, you know, without being a jerk about it, be a leader, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't see that, you know, when it comes to, well, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not looking hard for it, but I hadn't seen that in some of the interactions I've had with my daughter and just going to school and stuff like that. Nothing formal that they're showing the kids. It's just kind of like, if you got it naturally, cool. If you don't have it naturally, that's just on you, is what I'm seeing. I mean, is that accurate? Am I wrong, or are you seeing something different?
Um, I would say that goes into what you're saying with some of the dangers and how a young woman, and just how youth can be influenced to be entitled as bossy, or the word I often got for myself is cut and dry or black and white and very cold, or my delivery needs to be softened, and things of that nature. But for myself, when you come to the table with the facts and you're able to develop a strategy and you're able to analyze and think creatively and interpret and evaluate and reason, that can be very startling, especially for someone in elementary or middle, high school, undergrad, and graduate. When you're able to do that with a level of efficiency, it can be very startling. And one of the things that comes along with critical thinking as I'm listening to our conversation is evidence. And oftentimes, evidence and facts, you're not able to move away from those. Now, everyone can spin into their own conversations about what is evidence and what is fact. But when you're presented with something and you critically look at those, it can be, like I said, the only word I can think of is startling. I've created different systems and different ways to maneuver situations and handle a department. And oftentimes it's met with so much resistance when the outcome is what everyone was hoping to achieve. And once again, it makes people uncomfortable because it's not necessarily see I was right. It's more along the lines of people didn't want to slow down and really hear critically, and we're acting off emotion and we're reacting instead of saying, okay, what can we interpret from the evidence and facts in order to move forward? And when you I was going to say, when you get with individuals who do that, you're often looked at as difficult or cold or hard to work with. And that's not necessarily the case.
No, I was just going to agree with you. I was just chiming in to agree because especially when you're working and trying to help people and just bringing something to the table that they're not familiar with, because we spend a lot of time, especially working, with my team, we spend a lot of time putting together the idea and writing it out. And sometimes when you just have a conversation with someone and they say, oh, let's do this thing. And then you come back with a fully realized game plan, or at least something to written out that says, okay, we could do this, and this. What do you think? And it looks like all this text to some people. Like, I'm so busy. That's the thing you hear. I'm so busy. And they don't even want to give you the time to sit down and read the thing for 2 seconds and think about what it means. So I feel what you're saying. What's been the biggest influence in how your thinking has changed over time?
What a wonderful question. For me, I think the biggest influence is enhanced communication. And I want to teeter with being able to make informed, reasoned decisions professionally and personally. Those two go hand in hand for me. But I think my homework that I will always have is my communication skills. If there's a life skill or something that I'm working on for Crystal herself, it's going to be that. How to analyze and build evidence for any given situation, any premise, and how I can be more of an effective communicator with that. How to present any proposal personally and professionally more proficiently, and knowing my stuff, basically. You know what I mean? For me, that's really key. And again, having the resources to make informed, reasoned decisions. I often have encountered in my years professionally and personally individuals who just go. And for some people that works. For some people, that works. You know, there's plenty of people we can say that works for. You know, plenty of CEOs and business makers. Anyhow, but I have to say, as an African American woman in this world, sometimes our cards are, you know, it's different. So oftentimes we have to make informed, reasoned decisions, and very strategic. And it is, as an African American woman, we are playing a game of chess. So, yeah.
Not enough of us playing chess, some playing checkers or some other game I've seen.
No, we are playing a game of chess. Yeah.
Well, I'm
what an
going
awesome
to
question. I love that question.
Thank you. Thank you. I try. I'm going to stop this right here because we're just about out of time. But I do have one more question.
Sure.
What's something that your brain tries to make you do on a regular basis, and you have to will yourself not to do it?
Oh, my goodness. Slow down. And not to contradict what I just said, but I have to slow down because my ability to critically think is so fast. And sometimes I can take pieces and I can just analyze them so fast that oftentimes I move too quick for other people. And I have to tell myself to slow down. So that goes into what I was just saying, that enhanced communication. Yeah, slow down.
Oh, thank you. That's a good answer. There's some parts of me that say the same thing. Well, I want to thank you again, Crystal, for taking the time today.
Great. Thank you.
And for those listening to this recording that have additional questions or would like to connect with Crystal for follow-up, you can reach out to us at Team Woods, and our contact information will be in the description. And we'll forward your comments and questions directly to Crystal. So once again, thanks, Crystal.
You're welcome.
And this has been Scott Alexander reminding you to spend every day exploring your genius.